"23 more COVID-19 cases in the city, with all but 4 being imported." Donald Trump gives his blessing to a TikTok deal with Oracle and Walmart. And Trump plans to appoint a new Supreme Court justice soon to fill the opening left by the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Good evening and welcome. The city reported 23 COVID-19 cases today, with the majority being imported cases. There were 4 locally acquired infections.
Meanwhile, the authorities have informed Cathay Dragon that its flights from Kuala Lumpur will be prohibited from landing at Hong Kong International Airport for 2 weeks. Pinky Wong has more details.
All 4 locally infected patients reported today are related to previous cases. 2 of them are females, aged 12 and 43 respectively, who live in Mei Yin House at Shakimei Estate. Their family members were earlier found infected and linked to the Tai Wai Transwa City building cluster. The other 2 newly diagnosed local patients are males, aged 22 and 58 respectively. One of their family members, who works at a restaurant at Chong Hing Square in Mongkok, was earlier infected. The other 19 cases reported today are imported cases from India, the Philippines, Nepal, and Sweden. 7 of them from Nepal tested positive for the coronavirus in the second test they took during their quarantine period. Those from the Philippines include 2 domestic helpers and a ship crew member. A 62-year-old man from Sweden reported symptoms upon his arrival in the city. 8 patients arrived in Hong Kong on Friday from India. 5 transferred through Cathay Dragon flight KA734 from Kuala Lumpur to Hong Kong. The Civil Aviation Department informed the airline that its flights from Kuala Lumpur will be prohibited from landing at Hong Kong International Airport from September 20th to October 3rd. Cathay Dragon had scheduled to operate 3 flights between Kuala Lumpur and Hong Kong. The affected passengers will be informed. The airline is also assisting authorities to trace close contacts of the infected passengers. The relevant aircraft has been sent for deep cleaning. Meanwhile, the hospital authority is looking into the feasibility of resuming non-emergency services like follow-up consultations at specialist outpatient clinics when the pandemic situation is less serious. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
The Commerce Chief provided an update on so-called travel bubbles. The government is actively negotiating with 11 countries to make things easier on those eager for a getaway.
Where are we right now on the negotiations of the travel bubbles? Are there any difficulties?
Well, I think around the world we are all stranded by the pandemic. It's so easy to suppress. It's always difficult to lift with full confidence and comfort.
Speaking to TVB News, Edward Yao noted talks have begun between Hong Kong and destinations where possible bilateral travels can resume soon. But he highlighted the practical issues that will be worked out.
The initial stage is a double test, both pre-departure and upon arrival, commonly recognized, accredited, is an essential sort of health visa that we cannot do away with. But on top of that, would it impose certain additional requirement on not just bubbling this corridor, but also bubbling the flight between these 2 places after passengers being tested? All these preparations would need to be done early so that, well, when the time comes and when circumstances allows, then we could allow normal traveling as much as we could.
It's also double trouble for the Commerce Chief after the U.S. demanded products of Hong Kong origin, which are exported to the United States, be labeled as made in China. The mandate has now been delayed until November. Last week, Yao had written to the U.S. trade representatives to have the order withdrawn.
We consider U.S. measure ill-intended. It's meant to infringe Hong Kong's right, particularly our special status as a separate custom territory. It's also go contrary to the interests of mutual business. Businessmen will be very confused, being worried about misrepresenting the true origin of rules, which is part and parcel of the commercial practices, and also create a kind of uncertainty to not just Hong Kong's export, but also U.S. import. Irrespective of what response we are getting, I think it shouldn't deter Hong Kong from raising this.
U.S. President Donald Trump has given his blessing to the proposed sale of TikTok's American operations to a pair of U.S. firms.
We have a deal worked out, I think, with Walmart is going to buy it, along with Oracle, Larry Ellison. It's going to be an incredible combination. And I said, you know, do me a favor, could you put up $5 billion into a fund for education so we can educate people as to real history of our country?
TikTok's parent company ByteDance says it's not aware of any $5 billion education fund. Trump said if completed, the deal would create a new company, likely to be based in Texas and create 25,000 American jobs. He previously ordered ByteDance to sell TikTok's operations in the U.S., citing national security risks and claiming the Chinese government could abuse user data. Trump said this new company will be 100% secure. The Reuters news agency, citing a person briefed on the matter, reported U.S. shareholders are expected to control 53% of the new company, TikTok Global, while Chinese investors will hold 36%. That's because Oracle is expected to take a 12.5% stake in TikTok Global and store all its U.S. user data in the Oracle Cloud, and Walmart will take a 7.5% stake. The remaining 80% of shares will be distributed to ByteDance investors, and U.S. investors currently account for about 40% of ByteDance. The U.S. Commerce Department earlier announced it would block new downloads of TikTok and updates to the app. That was supposed to take effect Sunday. That will now be delayed a week.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he will appoint a new Supreme Court justice soon. A seat was opened when liberal icon Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away on Friday.
And with this election process coming so soon before the U.S. presidential election, it has already stirred controversy. President Donald Trump is not wasting any time in trying to find a replacement for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the U.S. Supreme Court. RBG, as she was affectionately known, passed away Friday after a battle with pancreatic cancer. With Ginsburg's death, the court has a 5-3 conservative majority and could end up tilting further to the right. The Supreme Court has great influence on divisive issues in the U.S., including gun control and abortion. Trump tweeted that selecting members of the highest court has long been considered the most important decision leaders make.
So Article 2 of our Constitution says the president shall nominate justices of the Supreme Court. I don't think it can be any more clear, can it? I don't think so. I don't think so. What do you think, Tom? Tom Tillis? I don't think it can be any more clear.
Trump also said he's likely to choose a woman. Those under close consideration: Amy Coney Barrett, beloved among conservatives; Barbara Lagoa, who is Hispanic and comes from the battleground state of Florida. Any nominee would need to be confirmed by the Senate, where Republicans hold the advantage. Typically, it takes months to vet and hold hearings on a Supreme Court nominee, and time is short before November. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell pledged to quickly bring to a vote whomever Trump nominates. Democrats immediately denounced that as hypocritical.
4 years ago, Mitch McConnell told us that there would be no vote in the United States Senate on a Supreme Court nominee because our president had only 1 year in office, and every Republican stood with him in the United States Senate. Today, Mitch McConnell and his henchmen believe that they can ram through a Supreme Court justice only 45 days from the election.
One Republican agrees with Warren. Maine's Susan Collins said replacing Ginsburg should be the decision of the president, who is elected November 3rd. 3 more defections from the GOP ranks would be needed to stop Trump's nominee from joining the court. Opponents of coronavirus restrictions protested in London's Trafalgar Square. The Resist and Act for Freedom rally ended in clashes between demonstrators and police. The confrontation comes as social gatherings of more than 6 people have been banned in Britain. The measures were introduced as infections have been doubling every 7 to 8 days. With more than 41,000 fatalities, Britain has Europe's highest death toll from the pandemic. In Bucharest, hundreds took to the streets over the mandatory use of masks in schools. Romania has seen a spike in confirmed cases, including a daily record of 1,713 infections Wednesday. Some compared the new measures to living under the communist and Nazi regimes. Oktoberfest celebrations got underway in Munich with the traditional tapping of a keg. The official celebration has been cancelled because of the pandemic, so 50 beer halls hosted smaller parties, conforming to distancing guidelines. Millions usually gather each year for the German city's beer fest.
And still ahead on tonight's news. Thai protesters demand reform of the monarchy. Police smash ketamine factory in Kuntong. And in Paris, carpenters put medieval techniques to use in Notre Dame's restoration. Welcome to TVB News. Thousands took to the streets of Bangkok this weekend in protest against Thailand's monarchy and government.
The demonstrations form a wider student-led movement that has been ongoing since July. Daniel Rao has more on this story.
The protests that rocked Bangkok this weekend are among the largest Thailand has seen in recent years. Rallies began on Saturday with authorities reporting that 18,000 people were in attendance. On Sunday morning, activists installed a plaque near Bangkok's Grand Palace. The plaque declared that the country belongs to the people and not the king. A monument in the same location commemorating the end of absolute rule by the royal family in 1932 had been removed 4 years ago. Demonstrators went on to submit a manifesto for reform of the monarchy to the King's Royal Guard police. This after they were blocked from marching to the city's government house by unarmed officers. The demonstrations marked the continuation of a wider student-led movement. Thailand's latest wave of political unrest was sparked in February, after a court ordered the pro-democracy Future Forward Party to disband. Protests resumed in June following the disappearance of an exiled activist in Cambodia. In addition to demanding reform of the monarchy, protesters have called for the dissolution of the government led by Prime Minister and former military leader Prayut Chan-o-cha. They also want the country's constitution to be rewritten to allow for greater freedom of speech. The Prime Minister has hit back at the demands and accused the activists of being unpatriotic. Under Article 112 of Thailand's Criminal Code, criticizing the royal family could lead to a prison sentence. The law has been more frequently enforced since the 2014 military coup, which saw Prayut assume power. Daniel Rao, TVB News.
Secretary for Security John Lee said Hong Kong has been able to resolve national security issues without asking for Beijing's help. This as the families of 12 Hong Kongers detained on the mainland are accusing the SAR government of being a mouthpiece for central government authorities. Dong Yao Nia has more.
It's been nearly 3 months since the sweeping national security law took effect in the city. Secretary for Security John Lee is doubling down on the law's effectiveness. He said Hong Kong's national security situation is changing in a positive direction due to the legislation. Lee said the city is seeing fewer violent incidents, advocacy for independence, and collusion with foreign powers since the law's enactment. Despite Lee's comments, protesters have been heard chanting pro-Hong Kong independence slogans at recent rallies. The security chief is, however, confident the police's National Security Department is capable of handling local affairs without the central government's assistance. Citing the principle of one country, two systems, he said, "The message that I've received is that the SAR will take care of all our own issues." But the local government is under fire over its handling of the detention of 12 Hong Kong fugitives on the mainland. Today, some family members of the detainees filed a case report at police headquarters. A lawmaker is pushing the SAR government to carry out an independent probe into the arrest.
At least they can use their data collected, for example, by the radar system of Marine Department, to tell the government, to tell the public and also the relatives what actually happened in the morning of 23rd of August. I think that will greatly help to clarify questions from the relatives. For example, like whether they really did left Hong Kong from a particular point, and what happened when they were in the waters of Hong Kong.
The families are also pressing the Hong Kong government officials to visit the 12 detainees in person to check on their condition instead of relying on information provided by mainland authorities. Dong Yang, TVB News.
Chief Secretary for Administration Matthew Cheung will meet with lawmakers next week to partner support for the government's $24 billion coronavirus relief package.
Combined with the previous two rounds, the proposal will further reduce the city's fiscal reserves. Haley Zhou has more.
The $24 billion anti-epidemic package announced this week is expected to shrink the city's fiscal reserves to $800 billion. The financial secretary says that's close to the level during the aftermath of the SARS outbreak in 2003 and about a year's worth of government spending. Chief Secretary for Administration Matthew Cheung is calling on lawmakers to support the plan. Cheung and other senior officials will head to the legislature this Friday to secure their support. But only about $4.5 billion out of $24 billion will be used to help the unemployed and support businesses in hardest hit sectors. On his blog this morning, Labour Chief Lau Chi-kwong recognized the government's wage subsidy scheme has paid off, citing an increase in the employed population between July and August compared to the April to May period when the epidemic was milder. But he sees other problems. The projections made 3 years ago indicated the city's working population would peak in 2022. But in fact, it has already started declining last year due to an economic downturn and continued to decrease this year amid the coronavirus outbreak. Law says this trend will slow the city's economic recovery. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
Police seized 130 kilos of powder in Kung Tong on Friday, which could potentially be extracted and turned into ketamine worth some $23 million. The powder in question is said to be contained in cosmetic products exported from Thailand. Officers believe syndicates were able to extract and process the powder into 50 kilos of ketamine. Police say the extraction process could have posed a fire hazard. The risk of sparking a fire was heightened as the substance was found in a subdivided warehouse. A 26-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the offense.
Carpenters used medieval techniques to hoist a 3-ton oak truss in front of the Notre Dame Cathedral on Saturday. It was built to replicate the original wooden structures that burnt down when the landmark caught fire in April 2019. The carpenters' demonstration marked the first of 2 European Heritage Day celebrations taking place this weekend. It gave spectators a glimpse of centuries-old construction methods. A debate broke out after last year's fire over whether the Notre Dame should be rebuilt in a classical or modern style. The argument was settled in July when officials decided to respect the cathedral's original design and materials. French President Emmanuel Macron wants the cathedral to reopen in 2024 ahead of the Paris Olympic Games. Leading architects believe that the renovation could take much longer to complete. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.
Bye for now.